When you first log on to a Boox device, it will guide you through setting up a few things, but I'm also going to show you where these are in the menus so you know where to find them if you want to change them later. Firstly, your home language is here from the settings. This is, if you like, the system language, and there are 28 options to choose from. There are more languages in the keyboard settings, however, and you could add as many as are available on Google keyboards, or within the Boox keyboard itself, you can change the language input. Settings menu here, keyboard language, and you can see there's now 39 options. And there's also options to download more in, for instance, the handwriting packages. I have both Englishes, Chinese and Spanish downloaded just to test them out, but there are loads more options to download as well. A total of 66 handwriting packages that you can download. And that number will only get larger as MyScript develops. And MyScript is the API that's built into the keyboard that lets it identify your handwriting. It's the same one as used by Remarkable and frankly most of the ink tablets. I do also recommend downloading the Gboard, which is available from the Play Store. It's one of the first things I install on any e-ink tablet at all. And the Gboard can be, I need to update it. The Gboard can be accessed via the keyboard settings, language and input, and you can tick it there, and then it's available as an option. Whenever you're about to type something, you can choose which keyboard you want to be using. It is the advanced keyboard that Google has developed. So within the Google keyboard, you can choose different keyboard layouts, QWERTY, Dvorak, things like this, every option you could think of, all the different languages, many different options there. Essentially, you're going to find an option that's going to work for whatever language you use in the Android ecosystem. I do like using the Boox keyboard though, it is very good, but if for any reason it's not working well, then you can go ahead and fall back on the Gboard. The handwriting input is good, and the voice typing is good. And also you have the Google voice typing as an option here on Android 12 as well. I don't think it does punctuation quite as good as the Onyx keyboard does, however. So that's languages. It'll ask you to set up the time zone. For some reason, I often just leave my Boox devices on Chinese time. I have no idea why, but of course you should set up your own time zone and different date formats, etc. You should also set up your preferences in terms of gestures, or whether you would prefer to use the toolbar, the navigation bar as they're calling it, at the bottom here, which is the normal thing you'd see on any Android device. I'm happy to use the toolbar. I swipe up once and it appears at any point, but you might prefer a cleaner screen and just remember to memorize all of the different gestures. It's quite straightforward. Your e-ink center from the left-hand side, back or home from the middle, and back to on the right there. So you can choose whether to have the toolbar at the bottom or just use gestures. And you can also have gestures from the side as well. I don't have any of them on the gestures. This is the setting that I have. Either way, whatever you choose will become second nature. And you need to know how to do all of these 5 things. Okay, so the e-ink center, this lets you calibrate the screen and how it's working. More about that later. Quick refresh just lets you clear up the screen of any ghosting or anything like that. Shouldn't be an issue in most cases. This is called the Recents panel, which brings you to the apps that you've been using. The home button is a little circle, which brings you back to home, and the home menu is this, or the back button, which takes you back from any action in any app, or back to home if the last thing you did was to leave the home. And the home button brings you back to whichever of these 6 screens that you were in last time, and you can also set a default home of which part of this you want to be your main home setting. I press it again, you see it goes to apps, which is what I've set as the default, because this looks now more like the normal Android screen with apps available straight away when I open the device. That Recents button is sometimes called the multitask switcher, by the way. You should also set up power management. And power management basically means how long do you want it to stay active before it goes to sleep when you haven't used it, and when do you want it to totally time out. These are the settings that I use: 30 minutes for going to sleep, or 1 day for total power off. Its sleep mode is quite low power, so you can expect it to not drain the battery too much in just sleep mode. But you may want it to sleep a bit sooner than that, because of course you should set a password such that all your things are kept secure here if you were to use that. A password is clearly in the password menu. You'll need to make yourself a minimum of 4-digit PIN code, and then you can also set up fingerprints in just the way that you would enroll any normal fingerprint from the scanner here. The power management is going to be quite an important thing to get right for you, because managing a battery on one of these newer BSR enabled devices is going to be an important thing. Have a play, but those are my recommended settings. And that might be a good place to start. Next in the setup, you basically need to get logged into 2 places. You need to make yourself a Boox account, which you can add by clicking here or sign into an existing one. Mine is linked to a phone number and it sends you a little code to log in for the first time, or it could be linked to an email address. Make sure as you set it up, you choose either the US server if that's closer to you or the EU server. It even comes up with a GDPR policy naming a data controller, which is good to see as it means that Boox are taking serious the security concerns that some people have. What your Boox account does is it stores all your reading data and it stores all your notebooks, and you get 10 gigabytes for free. Your reading data is your annotations and your bookmarks, things like that. And your notebooks are, well, they're all of your notebooks. The other thing that you need to sign into is you need to sign into Google Play Store. So the first time you boot up the Google Play Store, it will prompt you to log in with your Google account. Again, if you don't have a Google account, you can go ahead and make one. Your Google Play Store, that's where all of your third-party apps will come from. One more thing, another place you might like to sign into might be your work or your personal Microsoft account, and the way to do that is to download Company Portal and then go ahead and choose between one or the other. It can give you both instances, so I have a work Company Portal as well, and that will let you sign into all of your Microsoft accounts and use the cloud services there as well. You can also sign into the individual apps themselves. More on using Microsoft Work Profile apps later when I discuss how I use my Boox device at work. And then you're away really. I'll just quickly show you around the device. Boox devices now have two different home screens. The Note devices have this reading and notes type of home screen rather than the productivity type of home screen for the tab devices. Most often I end up returning to the apps menu because this is most like an Android home screen that I'm used to. And you can set your default home screen in system display and then choose which one you want it to go back to. So you might want it to return whenever you press the home button. You might want it to return to your notes. The only difference between this kind of app screen and the productivity type for the tab is that you don't get things like widgets. I personally think the Boox should just give you the option of whether you want the note style home screen or the tab style home screen on all of their devices, because why not? Maybe that'll come in a future update. So what the home screens you have are library, which is where anything that you've been reading PDF via the Boox Neo Reader will come. Also my planners, as I make a PDF and then plan on them. More on that coming in my planning section soon. Or you have the store, and the store is the one tab that I barely ever use because it is just the Boox bookstore, and they don't have any way to buy anything that you'd want to buy. They've just got a whole lot of older copyright-free things, which is perfectly fine. Frankly, I could spend my life just reading this stuff. And then of course there's notes, and more detail on this later. Storage gives you access to all of the different documents that are actually downloaded onto the device. You need to know where to find downloads because often you'll be bringing things from Chrome, downloading it, and then you'll need to open it to be able to read it. Or you can just access the entire root of the whole folder, which might look a little bit scary, but sometimes you might need to dive into here to find something that's been saved into a folder which isn't immediately accessed by this kind of open front view of your storage. Then there's apps, self-explanatory there, and of course you can make folders of apps, like I have all my work ones here, the plus folder at the top there, and then settings at the bottom there. You'll also need to get used to where the quick access menu is. So swipe down from the top right, it gives you the quick access menu. It looks just like any Android quick access that you're used to. You've got your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth, so you can quickly access those settings. But there are lots of settings in there that you might need to change quite quickly and often. It's also where you change your front lights, brighter and darker, colder and warmer. And it's also where you can choose to rotate the screen. You can either have it work with auto rotate, or as I do, I just leave it on manual rotation and choose the T that makes sense to you. You'll also find split screen in here, which will only really work when you actually open in an app. Those are what I mostly use it for. You can also change the volume in here. And you also have the option to turn the device into do not disturb mode, which I have on all of the time. You see what it's not on? I've got my little notification tray just there. Just got all my different distractions. So now it's a distraction-free device. You can also turn on and off the customizable nav ball, which I do leave on most of the time. Sometimes there'll be something that you want from there for quick access, but you certainly don't need that if it gets in your way and annoys you. And there's a little app that lets you change what is actually featured on that nav ball as well. So you can change this and customize it to have your own set of 9 different buttons you want quick access to. Most people will just leave it off, but play about with it, you might like it. I also recommend that you go straight into Neo Reader, so just open absolutely any book into Neo Reader and you change how the page turn works. Because if you leave it on the default, you will get accidental page turns and you will find that frustrating. So you go into the menu here, you go more and settings, and then you go touch settings. By default, it's on mode 1. You want to change that to mode 6. What that means is now that everywhere on the screen, apart from the top corners, are not going to interact with your palm touch, only the pen touch really. You can still though do swipe to page turn, but it just means that you're unlikely to get an accidental page turn from your palm setting down. You can still touch up here at the top, or you can swipe backwards and forwards, or you can use the backwards and forwards buttons from the menu, which you can also hide at the side. Most of us do put our palm down before we start writing, and you generally don't want it to accidentally swipe the page when you're about to write something just here. And you're probably going to find that you're writing in the PDF viewer almost as much as you are in the note-taking app. You're probably going to find that annotating PDFs is a really useful part of the workflow with the e-ink tablet. I'm going to go more into depth in NeoReader and handling PDFs later, so stay tuned for that. But that's one thing that I recommend you change immediately when you get the device. From NeoReader, one thing that's really cool is that you can access all of your highlights and scribbles from this little contents menu here. You have built-in tables of contents in the PDF if they come with one already. You have your bookmarks if you've made any of your own. You have annotations, which are things you've highlighted. So you've highlighted these different texts. If you've written a note ascribed to that highlight, then that will appear where it says none currently. And then you can see all your pages that you've actually done handwriting scribbles on. And that's the most useful for me. You can also, of course, select all these and export them to a separate PDF, which is just the pages that you've written on. And I think that's a really useful tool, double useful there. And it's great that you have essentially all of the same note-taking tools here in the app, including now the Smart Scribe functionality. All of the same note-taking tools here within the PDF reader as you do in the notebooks. And you can do that on any file format that you can read in NeoReader. Another thing to say just for you while you're initially getting used to using your tablet is if you see anywhere a little red dot, I haven't got any I don't think, hovering over, a little bit like this one, hovering over any of the options, that means that there is a little tutorial to tell you how to use that for the first time. You'll often see that as well when you do a firmware update. The firmware updates come automatically, but at any time you can go in and you can check which version you've got and whether there's one to be downloaded and installed. So if you've got a little notification anywhere, then go ahead and follow that tutorial. They also appear after updates to teach you how to use some of the new features. Another firm recommendation from me is to spend time reading the user manual. You download it from this little menu here, and then when you click it, it will open in NeoReader. And the nice thing is that you can get used to how to use the annotation features, how to use the NeoReader whilst you're reading about how to use the general device. I strongly suggest you sit down with a cup of tea one evening and you spend about an hour reading through that. You will thank yourself for that in the future. And every time you read something that you think, well, I'll use that feature, go ahead and leave a little asterisk next to it, or write how you would use it next to it. And then you can see it via that contents menu, see all of your scribbles on one page. Here, for instance, navigation center from the top left edge. If you need to quickly find things like downloads, you do want at least some notifications on from there. And that way you can quickly skip back to anything you've seen. Well, actually, I think that's a useful thing. Remind yourself how to use that function. So that's a really good start to that. Let's see how I get on in my first few days using this once again at work. My main use case is as a daily planner, and I will show you later in another video, another part of this video, I will show you how I make these planners so that I can plan out my week at work. I have most certainly been enjoying revisiting using the Note Air 3C. It's true that I haven't missed all that much the keyboard case, which I was expecting to miss it more on the Tab Ultra C Pro. The Note Air 3C is the one that slips in and out of your bag more easily, and it's the one that does feel better whilst you're writing. It is the more natural device of the two for note-taking. That full comparison is available for you once you finish with this video, and I will say that my heart is still with the Ultra form factor, but I am still very much enjoying the Note Air 3C currently, and it suits me for work right now. So that's me. I've gone through the whole of the manual, and even I, an experienced user of Boox, I found something that I didn't know how to do. So look out for those that show you around the Boox user interface. And one of those things I found out has solved a particular pain point for me. So where do you even find the manual? Because that's not immediately obvious. It doesn't appear automatically in the library, although it's in my library. It's not immediately obvious. It's down here in the settings. You click this once and then you can click it and it will download. So it will actually, I already have it. It will download the latest copy of the manual that they've got available. Now you might expect the settings to be in the drop-down menu here, like it would be on most Android devices, and it is on the Tab devices. But on the Note style launcher, you can always find the settings in the home page, one of these tabs down the side, so settings is here. Keyboard hookup is really easy, and that is from this menu here. Hold down the Bluetooth, grab your keyboard, and you can see mine is already paired, so it should just be a case of clicking that and making sure it's on, and it will connect. But for first time pairing, what you need to do, put your keyboard into pairing mode, which for me is 4 seconds on any one of those switches. Now you can see it's available and it should pair, and that's your option there. So it couldn't be easier, and actually I think now when I turn it on onto Bluetooth, as long as I'm in that pairing mode, it should just pair now automatically. So that is very easy to do, and typing is very easy as well. I'll talk about apps shortly, but I of course like just to type directly into Google Docs. Cool. The storage management is here. By default, you can see just the sort of main folders that you might want to use, but if you do need to go in greater depth, you can get all of the folders on the Android device itself. So you may sometimes need to find things in the download folder, or you might need to use this menu to actually move things around. The way you move things is you simply hold them down. You can see you've got copy, cut. That will let you, if I cut that, look. Now it gives me the paste option, and I can go to any folder I like in the storage and I can paste it there. I don't want to do that, but that's how you do that. I would imagine, unless you're downloading a lot of videos and pictures and things, I would imagine you won't get too close to that 64 gigabytes, but there is extra storage on board by the expandable TF or micro SD card slot, which just pops out there, and that will be available via the storage menu as well. So you might occasionally need to move things, because by default the library will scan certain folders in there. So in the options here in the library settings, you can choose which folders you want it to automatically scan. So essentially, whenever I put a book into storage book or storage shop, or I can add any folder I want, I might well just put my downloads in there while I'm at there, and documents, and that. Now it will automatically scan. You see it's brought those in now into my library. It will automatically scan those folders every time I go into the library. So I think that's an important one to have a quick look at. You can also manage your library by adding bookshelves from here as well, and you can call it whatever you want from there. That's just like a folder, but within the library. It doesn't physically move them anywhere on the device. So the first thing I do whenever I get a new Boox device, of course, is I go ahead and I sign into Google Play Store, so I've discussed, and I go ahead and download some of my basic apps. The Google Play Store is quite nice because it does actually show you apps that you've downloaded on other devices. But I would suggest that you don't want every single app from your phone on this device, and stay away from installing Chess if you want your device to be distraction free. Apps that I do are all of the Microsoft ones. So I download Word, OneDrive. I don't actually use OneNote very much, but people like it as a demo, so I put that on quite a lot. Excel, of course, is a must as well. And I also download Company Portal. And I'm going to show this a little bit later on and talk about how to set that up into work mode. But essentially, if you sign in for your work account with Company Portal, then it will make a badged version of all of the Microsoft apps that you like. Now I have my work version apps here, which are signed in with my work account rather than my personal Microsoft account. And that is very, very useful, because now if I'm not going to go into these because I'll be showing you some confidential data. But when I go into these are logged in as me at work, and these ones are logged in as me, myself, Kitbets Masters, my own personal account. Other things I install are Xtiles, because that contains all of my notes. That's where I sort of jot down my ideas as I develop my scripts and ideas as I go. I install all of the Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Docs, all of those things, just for managing my cloud things, because that's where I finally edit my scripts and then get them ready to put onto my teleprompter and things like that. And also just generally manage my life documentation through Google Drive. Of course, Gmail, Kindle. I install PDF Element, which is a great PDF editor. The YouTube apps, not for watching videos, but for managing my YouTube stuff, and Space Desk as well, which is really useful as well. Some of the other things I've installed are just generally for demonstrating things I've installed to do demos. Apps will take up quite a lot of your storage space though, so just be aware of that. But you only need to install ones you think you'd use, of course. Another thing to say about work apps is through here you have a button to switch off work apps. Now the idea of that is that now none of these are signed in, essentially. It will be back with one press though. And whilst they're not signed in, although they don't completely log out, what doesn't happen is you don't get notifications for your work email. So I think that's an excellent thing for keeping your personal life separate from your work life. You can also edit what's in this quick access menu by the little edit button there. Now, after a little while, your home screen is getting a little bit busy, so you can put apps into folders. So the way to do that, little plus up here, and I'm going to make one with just utilities. And into that, I'm going to put things which are just Boox utilities, really. These apps that Boox installs on your device before you get to it. So I'm going to leave those available on the front so you can tidy up your space in that way. And lastly, the e-ink center is available through two places. It's available from the drop-down menu here. It's also available on your home menu here as well. I'll talk about that a little bit now, and then I'll talk a bit more when I talk about different apps later on. So 4 basic screen modes, HD, which essentially that means that it's refreshing pretty regularly. It's going to do a whole screen refresh whenever it feels like it needs to give you the best clarity. The balanced mode won't ever do a full screen refresh unless you ask it to. It will go pretty quickly, but it will prioritize better clarity of images. And the fast and the ultra fast are exactly what they say. You will get a bit more ghosting, but it will change screen pretty quickly. Ultra fast, even faster still. And this is one of the benefits of the Boox Super Refresh technology, as you probably will have seen very little difference between these 3 modes, the balanced, fast and ultra fast, because the Boox Super Refresh technology does such a good job of cleaning up the screen. You really see that best, in my opinion, when you are searching on the web. So if you're looking forward to using an e-ink screen on the internet and you know there's an issue with flicking and getting a lot of ghosting, then your different screen modes are your best friend here. The ultra fast mode, because as you can see, it retains a lot of clarity, but gives you, for e-ink at least, very smooth scrolling. So essentially just play around. I very rarely do anything with these settings, anything more than just living in these. And generally, I don't change out of balance mode because I think that is smooth enough to scroll. And I just think it gives you a good clarity of images. You might find sometimes that you can't see the difference between different parts of the image. Images look a bit washed out, or images look way too dark. And so that's when you would increase or decrease the dark color enhancement. So it gets much less dark or much more dark. But I would say that generally around 30 seems to be a pretty good place to be. Again, if you feel like the colors are a bit muted, then try the vividness enhancement. But as you can see, I've lost a lot of the greens by increasing that. Again, I rarely feel the need, apart from if I'm in maybe a book about art, I rarely feel the need to increase the vividness thing. And the color brightness is going to try and increase the brightness of each of the colors without leaving it washed out. High contrast mode is generally going to be for viewing text. You can see the text looks a little bit better in that high contrast mode. But again, I don't think it's really a necessary thing to have on very often, but you might find there are settings that you do. Now, importantly, what you can do is you can set a specific setting for individual apps, and it will remember the settings that you leave for individual apps. So now I'm in balanced mode in Chrome. If I go to PowerPoint and I change the screen mode into fast, come out of PowerPoint and back into Chrome, it switches the screen back to balanced mode. So it remembers your optimization for different apps. So your time spent isn't going to need to be done every single time. It remembers your e-ink settings for each app. I think that's great. And you can see what they are. In the settings menu, you can see what the different modes are that you have set for each different app. In the optimize, you've got a couple more options. DPI settings, you can see what that did there. Essentially what these DPI settings are doing is telling the app what resolution to treat this screen as. If it's different to the actual resolution of the screen and you're maybe not seeing things off the side or anything like that, you might need to change this, but generally I don't often need to change this at all. And these are the things that are using the system text rather than this, which is displaying the text on the web page. Again, you can see there are just many different options for you to have a look at. And I've talked about the do not disturb mode, but if you really want to get technical, you can decide which apps can and which apps can't send you notifications. So you can make this as distraction free as you want it to be. It's in the apps, app management, app info menu. Next, I want to talk about the battery life and battery handling. You do have a whole range of different options. If you go into settings, you have power management in here. And I've talked about what I leave the auto sleep and power timeout out on. If you do choose to go into auto sleep with a shorter time, then you will get less battery consumption. However, it isn't consuming a lot of power when it isn't doing much, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Similarly with the power off timeout, if the screen isn't doing much, then the battery will not be draining very quickly. Something that may help though is the Wi-Fi connection. So if the screen is off and the Wi-Fi is on, then that can be draining power. So I have it set to turn off the Wi-Fi when the device is asleep. A good idea may be to actually monitor in here what your different apps are using. And you can see I've been spending a lot of time in the reader recently, so that's been the largest drawer of power. You might notice times when it's using the battery more rapidly. For instance, since I've been doing this demonstration and skipping between apps, it's gone down pretty quickly. You might choose, however, to actually go with no Wi-Fi on when you're just normally using the device, and choose when you do need to put it on and off the Wi-Fi, and that will save you some energy in your battery as well. Similarly with the Bluetooth. So having both of those off will give you a little bit more power. And we really are finding that apps like Chrome or YouTube or anything which is doing very rapid screen refreshes rather than simple reading apps, those are the ones that are draining the battery most quickly. So just be aware of that in terms of managing your own battery. The other option that you have is to try your best to run it with as low as possible front light. And actually I find in times when the ambient light is good, I am now using my color e-ink devices even with the lights completely off. Somewhere near 50% gives you just that little bit more, and the difference between 50% brightness and full brightness is pretty massive in terms of how quickly the battery drains. So just be aware of those different settings to get the most out of your battery. I personally think that you will enjoy ink more if you use ambient light preferentially and try and sit near windows and things like that. You will get the best out of your ink device in any case. So reading will give you longer battery life than high refresh rate apps. One last thing to say about apps is where to find the individual app settings. Most of you on Android will be used to finding this type of thing through a settings menu here from your control center, but now you must use the apps app management setting. So within the apps homepage, there is this little menu, choose app management, and you get the option to manage the individual apps. Go into here, app info, and you'll see a very familiar, this is the ordinary Android app manager here. So if you need to tell PowerPoint to stop doing something, to force it to stop doing something, to uninstall it, remove permissions, all of your app permissions and app details will be here rather than from the drop down. But there are a few other important things to say about this particular menu. Your work profile apps can be managed in here. So to actually allow the device to have separate work profiles for individual apps, then you will need to go and switch it on through here. And also I found this when I was reading the menu, that forced to follow the system orientation is very useful. For instance, YouTube Studio always wants to be in portrait, but I found that you can force it to actually rotate with the device, force it into landscape mode essentially here. And that's really very useful to me. And especially on the Ultra devices, I was having trouble because you have to be in landscape when you're using those keyboards. Apart from that, just be aware that you can find things like app optimization in here as well. And if I just reset the app optimization tutorial, you can see the first time you click on an app on the device, it takes you through and tells you what all of the different settings are for in app optimization mode. Briefly then, the reading app. And again, I'm going to come back to the reading app later on in the content and give you lots of pointers on it. There is no sort of menu icon for Neo Reader, but every time you open a PDF or any book through the library, it will open it in Neo Reader, which is the Boox reading app. And it's really, really good. When you're reading, you'll probably want to hide that menu up here. There's a couple of different menus. There's this menu, which is the reading menu. You've got a page 10 here as well. And then there's the scribble menu. And this gives you access to all the same pen tools in the notes taking app with different colors. And you can have 5 different pens up here, all available to use in their different colors or pen styles. And you have all of the same pen and pencil tools as usual. You also have all of the same Smart Scribe features. They can be accessed down here through the AI. So generally hide that, swipe across because you've disabled the single touch. Page 10 and you're away. The lasso is hidden in here, and that's really quite annoying the way the lasso works. Now you have to go back into the lasso tools to do things like copy, and I mean, it's just not good enough the way the lasso works, frankly. Hopefully it'll improve. You can choose what to include and what not to include up there as well. In the handwriting menu, this is the thing about Boox, is everything is customizable. Within the reading menu, you've got one further menu, and you can also customize the general settings to give you quick access to lots of these menus. You might want to see which of these you actually use and then decide whether to have quick access to them actually. And even within this general menu, you've got a further reading menu that gives you access to all of the detailed and many options that you have. Even then, you have more and you have settings within there as well. You can see why I'm going to come back to the Reader app later on. One more thing to say though, that you'll definitely want to be able to find is your contents. And the contents has the inbuilt table of contents inside the PDF or whatever document you're reading. It has your bookmarks that you might have left. It has annotations, which really, these are what I use as bookmarks in a way. This is the highlighted text here. And then I can go to that page and see which bit I've highlighted. And also within that, if I've made a note attached to that highlight, then it will display my own note as well. So this is the highlighted text and this is the note. Those can be sorted by color, incidentally, and I've used all the same color in this case. But when you do highlight something on the book, then you can choose a color, and that highlight within that contents menu, you'll be able to sort those different highlights. That's excellent. And then you can then export all of those as well. Also, separately to that, you can see every page that you've handwritten on. You can go to that. So these are all of the different things that I've had a quick look through and thought that I would want to bring you in a full explanation of how the reader works. There's loads. The other menus are split view down here, where you can choose to have it side by side with another document. Navigation, how do you want it to go through the document? Article mode is particularly useful if you have something which is in columns, or you want to use a half view, so you want to go top and bottom, maybe to have a landscape to show the top of one page and then the bottom, and then go through the document that way. There are just so many different options of how you can read here. It is excellent. Just remember to find things and think, where is it likely to be? Often in a more menu. And then lastly, in this quick introduction, the Notes app itself, very, very useful. When you create a notepad, you've got two options. You've got a handwriting notepad or a text notepad. You have different templates that you can use, and you can change those within the document once it's actually made. And the text also has templates, for instance, things, minutes, study guides, things like that. The text notepad is basically like a simple word processor, but I just read in the manual there is only a 5,000 word limit in the text one here. So you're going to want to be capturing your text there and then putting it into a proper word processor for turning into any published documents you might want to make. Handwriting is where I live normally. I tend to just go for blank, although there are lots of useful templates and you can upload your own as well. If I was going to do any, then it would probably be a grid. You get the same options up here with your 5 different customizable pens that you can stick to, and you can change any of those up here. 16 different colors, including 5 of which are sort of grayscale. I tend to use this pen to write with, somewhere around 4 to 8, and tend to write in black. You have optional Smart Scribe functions here as well, and you have text recognition as well. It's did okay, isn't it? Apart from the note, you can change that before you do anything with it. You have all the Smart Scribe functions here, like shape perfection. Didn't work. Like scribble to delete. So this is good. You can also now fill them in. And stripe through erase you've just seen. You can actually make shapes from here, although you just wouldn't need to. The canvas, now the size on the canvas means 1 to 1 of this screen. So 1 to 2 will add me an extra sort of screen length underneath here. 2 by 2 will make it 1 that way and 1 down again. So you can now see I've got basically 4 times the space in my book, and I can also do a custom size as well. But the maximum size is 2 by 2. If you use the cropping, I think it will crop as tightly as it can on the text you have, down to as small as 1 to 1. Layers, you can add up to 5 layers and you can make them visible or invisible. The nice thing about that is you could write on top of the thing. So some people like to set out templates below on a lower layer, because now I can not only not show that layer, but also if I delete what's on that layer at first, it won't delete what's on the layer underneath. So that's useful. I do wish they had layer blending up here as well though. And if you do want to change your template, you can change it by clicking on the bottommost layer, or indeed they've now added template at the top here. And you can do that on the current page or on all pages. Lots to like. There's obviously backup and undo and redo. This is where your page manager is from. And you can go forwards and back, and forwards on a page just adds a new page as well. You can add text boxes in here, but I wouldn't recommend that you do much of that. Go to text notes if you do want to do that, or simply type into Google Drive or Word or something, and you can change the gestures. And now these have actually all got quite a lot better even since they were changed. It used to be the case you could just turn off touch and then you could use the stylus to do everything, and just you wouldn't get any accidental page turns. But I tend to find now generally I don't tend to get accidental palm touches. So that's the basics of the Note app. Just remember, however, that it doesn't automatically save your notes. So do occasionally be saving. So it saves it when you come out of the notes, not automatically as you go. I think that's something they should change. You obviously have lots of options in here as well. We'll talk about them when we talk a bit more detail later. And these little guys, these are your book notebooks. So I don't have any notebooks associated with the book, but I don't know if you saw in Neoreader, one of the reading options, split view, was document and handwritten notes. It's created a notebook which belongs to this PDF or this ebook. Now when I come out of that, I can get back to that from that same menu here. It will go to my same book that belongs to it, or I can get back to that through my notes here, and these books are in there. There we are, it's the notes app. So probably at this point, you're starting to see what I mean when I say there is a real balance here between features and ease of use. It seems like every menu for Boox, there is a more menu after that. So remembering your way around it, even for me, is pretty tricky, and I live my life using these tablets and I review them for a living, so there is a lot to know. But don't panic, because it is all there in the manual, and as long as you can do what you need the tablet to do, then that's good enough. Can you get this to do what you want it to do? Then that is something that IT technicians often talk to their clients about. They say, can you get the computer or can you get the device to do what you need it to do? If you can, then you're a good enough user of that technology. Ask yourself, what do you need this tablet to do? Do you need to read and make notes on it? In which case, everything I've shown you so far, that's good enough. Do you want to do a little bit more? Do you want to get into the technical side of it and get as much as you can from the device? Well, then look forward to more content as I dive in deeper into that functionality.